Okay, good evening to everyone, our viewers on Facebook, those of us in our Zoom meeting room, and those who will be watching via YouTube, Mr. Ako's YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us for this final video or this final online lecture on future trends in PNG's foreign policy. We've gone through the different topics from topic 1 up to topic 9, and this will be our final topic for this semester, for this unit called Foreign Policy in PNG, PG428. So to conclude our discussions and to wind up the semester or the lecture series, we have Mr. Ako once again to talk about future trends from his perspective. And we'll continue the discussion tomorrow as well on PNG and rugby league in particular. So without further delay, I now hand over the virtual microphone to Mr. Ako.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yegiora, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, my apologies for this 30 minutes delay. I was not able to make it back quickly. But the good thing is that today, the Australia PNG Development Partnership Plan 2024-2029 was launched. And ironically, there was all the development partners and the contractors set up booths. And one of the booths was on rugby league. There was a booth on rugby league and sports diplomacy. So it rhymes in very well. Tomorrow we will have a very lively discussion on the topic. So I'm so glad that happened that way. So yes, so we'll continue straight. We'll continue straight onto the final lecture, and let me share the screen now. So our final lecture this year is on future trends in Papua New Guinea, future trends in PNG's foreign policy. Okay, so as we can see, after 49 years as an independent nation, we are faced with challenges of moving our country forward. So when you look at these challenges and why we are where we are, despite the 49 years of development partner engagement, and this have been compounded by the economic statecraft activities of this very development partners. So this raises the question of why we are yet to have a free trade agreement with our trading partners. Now, yes, there are versions of the FTAs which have been signed over the last 40 years. Patekra with the Pacific Island trade was one of the very first ones, and on it was built the current trade benefits which our Polynesian colleagues, Polynesian Wantoks, are enjoying at the moment in terms of their vegetables and all that stuff. So these challenges are now compounded by the advent of the new normal after COVID, and then COVID led on to the advancement of digital technology that is now affecting all aspects of our lives. So sadly, we are yet to have a white paper, but it is in draft form, so which is good. The advent of the new normal now means that if PNG is inadequately prepared to map a drivable course to purposely advance any economic development undertaken, it may wish to pursue under the current circumstances. The white paper will provide that direction. So the possible emerging trends in PNG foreign policy formulation may very well be driven by government to business collaboration efforts, which have to be undertaken with the private sector. And the Business Council over the last 3 years has effected its private government connect process. And in the last 12 months, it has added another platform, which is called the G2B Consultative Forum, which remains an important vehicle to facilitate these efforts. The G2B Consultative Forum is of importance also because the PMNEC, Chief Secretary Ivan Pomaliu, and President of the Business Council, Mrs. Susil Nelson Kongoy, they co-chair that process. And there have been 2 consultative forums, I think, so far, and there's another one planned for October. Now, in the absence of a foreign policy white paper, the PNG foreign policy in APEC and its driver the roadmap to domesticate the outcomes of the APEC 2018 leaders statement supports this configuration. Approved by Cabinet in February 2020 under its decision number 36/2020/2020, this foreign policy on APEC remains a guiding light in this turbulent environment. Now, this picture shows then Prime Minister O'Neill explaining to his Australian and New Zealand counterpart why the paragraphs in the Erakone Declaration were critical to PNG's APEC 2018 host year. The subsequent 2018 APEC Leaders Chair statement laid the foundations for the PNG APEC foreign policy and its roadmap in 2020. These 2 documents took into account the new and emerging trends in PNG's international relations domestically and regionally. So one of these trends would be the new normal as the engine of growth. Now, in 2020, during the height of COVID, Prime Minister James Marape, in one of his statements, informed Papua New Guinea that it will now need to adjust to the new normal and learn to live with it, meaning adjusting to a new way of life, living, working, and interactions with other people. In saying so, it is also equally important to note that the world has been living with a new normal for a very long time. You know, many diseases caused by viruses have no cure to this day, yet we have learned to adapt our lifestyle to living with them. For instance, HIV has been around since the 1980s, or possibly even before then. No cure has been found for it yet we have adapted to its existence in the world today. COVID-19 is one of the most challenging health and economic crises of our time, prompting all economies around the world today to commit to safeguarding the lives of their people, including the economic well-being, which is very, very important to their livelihood. Now, COVID-19 has transformed the way business is done nowadays and now requires structural reform more than ever to improve the way of doing business and to unleash economic prosperity for all Papua New Guineans. This includes encouraging the use of digital technology in all aspects of doing business and in promoting human resource development. The recently concluded IPA's regulator summit also saw Secretary Matainaho, Secretary of the Department of ICT, talking about the e-single window, which involves several agencies, maybe I think 19 agencies, to make trade facilitation and investments and the export-import of trade more easy and accessible for everyone on both ends of the extreme. Now, the following scenarios are just some pointers which I hope were taken into consideration by the EPG during the foreign policy formulation exercise, which was carried out in the past 12 to 18 months. You can see the movement of essential goods and services, as well as the essential movement of people in a safe manner and identifying and resolving unnecessary barriers to limit the resilience of our domestic supply chains. This remains very critical after the new normal. Education, including science, technology, and innovation, are now very crucial to Papua New Guinea's post-COVID-19 recovery measures, including business continuity plans. And the government's current drive on STEM education, mainly to the US, is one important factor in this. And Dr. Waine and his team are spearheading this. Thirdly, you have the importance of continuing the development and contribution of digital technologies in safeguarding the health and well-being of the people from health threats and improving the resilience, scalability, and sustainability of our health systems, which is now paramount importance. And like I mentioned earlier on, the DICT, Department of DICT, and the watch of Secretary Matainao has moved up a few notches in supporting this. DICT, in fact, kicked off its innovation, technological innovation drive, taking it out from the APEC 2018 leader statement. If you look at all the documents in the presentation, it all ties back to the ERACON statement and how they have used that leader statement, APEC leaders statement, to domesticate those outcomes into the benefit of the country. So in this decade leading up to 2020, it is now very critical for public-private partnership and engagements to be harnessed to promote and advance the important sectors that will be pivotal in advancing this undertaking. Market access for non-extractive industry, particularly in agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and other commodities, is now paramount. To effect this, current bilateral arrangements will now have to be reviewed. Serious consideration must now be given for our current bilateral arrangements to be reviewed, and if possible, new ones with new bilateral partners established. And this can be done through formal free trade agreements, purposely to secure and formalize markets for our farmers, taking into account economic statecraft. Now, quality infrastructure is now critically important to complement our connectivity endeavors. And sustainability and inclusive economic development plans must now be rolled out, while ongoing structural reform initiatives must now be pursued to the end to strengthen and support economic development agendas through the MTDP4. You see, this will then pave the way for the government's economic corridor concept to be implemented in full throughout the country. The continuing structural reform exercise in the ICT sector can also contribute to addressing some of the ongoing challenges faced by the rural communities. This is in terms of energy distribution and consumption, accessibility to communication and information services, which will in turn address issues relating to inequality and opportunities, thereby boosting productivity. And finally, promoting innovation and digitalization in the economy will enable all businesses to carry out their activities and empower inclusive economic participation, and at the same time attract foreign direct investment. This is the Committee on APEC Policy issues during the preparations for APEC 2018. So the significance of this picture is not about the persons in it. It is about what's behind them. When you look on the windows and right behind where everyone is sitting, you will see the original hard data scribbling done by the copy. And this is the scribbling that made up the APEC PNG 2018 theme and policy priorities. And subsequently, the APEC 2018 leaders meetings chair's ERACON statement. You see, these were pasted around the four walls of the small hideout at Oakley House in Hall on the first week of December 2017, as a reminder to everyone who sat in there about what was at stake. And these documents or these papers remain so until after that fateful special senior official meeting in Singapore on 7th of December 2019, when they were ceremoniously taken off and claimed by some patriots for safekeeping. I guess the question is, do we have mechanisms within our bureaucracy which can enable all stakeholders to come together for a common cause? What is the common cause? What is a common cause? that can bring in all the departments out of their silos and bring them in together to row as one, as Team PNG. And this example is exacerbated by the inability of the academia to have had a say in the formulation of the current foreign policy white paper. That is a case in point. One of the other scenarios would be one of the other trends, sorry, would be multilateral diplomacy, APEC PNG 2018. You see, as you've seen, the copy had come together since 2015 to start organizing the APEC working documents and eventually the theme, which led into the outcomes. So the theme and the policy priorities were based or are always based on APEC's overarching objective on the achievement of the BOGO goals on free and open trade and investment facilitation, as well as the APEC Connectivity Blueprint 2015-2025, where leaders committed to strengthen physical, institutional, and people-to-people connectivity by taking agreed actions and meeting agreed targets by 2025. That's next year. And this is purposely for a seamless and comprehensively connected and integrated Asia-Pacific region. So you can see the work, the structural reform work done by the Department of Treasury and the structural reform work done in the DICT space. It all takes into account these outcomes. The PNG APEC Secretariat, as the mandated division within the Department of Primacy and NEC, in taking heed of NEC decision number 422/2018, convened the first ever copy workshop in April, convened a copy workshop in April 2019, after the 1 year after the host, to brainstorm ideas and thoughts on how to effect these instructions. The cabinet had instructed government to get the outcomes and put them into a workable roadmap to drive towards achievement. So following this workshop and the ensuing series of one-on-one consultations with stakeholder agencies and departments, note that ensuing one-on-one consultations with stakeholder agencies and departments, and the Secretariat covered all the copy agencies, and there were more than 20, 26, 27, 28 of them. After the consultations, a draft roadmap was completed and circulated again in May 2019 to all the agencies again for their inputs and comments before it was finalized in the second half of the year for Cabinet's further consideration and endorsement. It will take Cabinet 3 months, I think 3 or 4 months to the process from the NEC Secretariat up, because I remember there were on 2 occasions a couple of the requirements had not been met, I think in terms of copies and some typos. So the team had to take the cabinet submission back and fix it up. Now, you see, these are the APEC 2018 now theme of harnessing inclusive opportunities, embracing the digital future, and its 3 policy priorities, which you have seen here. Those are the policy priorities. So these policy priorities came from the theme. So as part of the overall undertaking in the ERACON statement, leaders provided specific instructions on the BOGO goals and the World Trade Organization for member economies to pursue in order to fulfill their respective commitments in the APEC process in line with these 3 policy priorities. If you hyperlink to www.apec.org, you can view the full outcomes of the APEC 2018 Leaders ERACON statement and the priorities and the strategies that would support and facilitate regional economic integration, trade, and investment facilitation. One of the trends would be strategic intent. The PNG's foreign policy on APEC. So as I mentioned, this was endorsed by Cabinet in its decision 36/2020, with the roadmap was endorsed. The approach was to be through a selective engagement approach so that we can pick and choose. And the selective engagement approach was both not only for the economies which we could engage with. It was also internally on the departments who would be who would be encouraged to engage more. Those who after APEC 2018 showed a lack of interest, showed a lack of initiative, and they decided to creep back into their own silos, that covered them also. They were ruled out. So when you have a discussion with the APEC PNG APEC secretary, they will tell you there's only 7 or 8 departments who were selectively engaged to engage with in the APEC process to drive PNG's development agenda and interest in the APEC space. Okay, so this new decision also renamed the copy, the I in the copy from issues to implementation, and the copy would be the apparatus to implement the roadmap. Now the roadmap, you see, the roadmap would be implemented and managed through a project management process, purposely to achieve the strategic objectives of the PNG foreign policy on APEC 2030. And this was to ensure tangible outcomes to its various activities as scheduled between now and 2030. You will realize that the tangible outcomes would cover the country's PNG DSP 2010-2030 and the particularly the economic corridor concept. So this would be assimilated into an organizational project management framework and converted into the appropriate languages such as portfolio with their programs and then projects, all taking into account the inputs and outcomes of the sectors, of the different sectors in the previous MTDP 3. You can refer to the foreign policy book. The whole framework is there. And this is my my thoughts on how to synergize the bureaucracy to the national development agenda. So you can have all the based on the APEC foreign policy, foreign policy on APEC. So you mix the trade policy, the Arakone statement, leader statement, the PNG DSP 2010, and if there was a security, the national security policy which we now have, you can throw it in there, and then the roadmap, and it will spew out the roadmap, and the roadmap will cover all those 4 pathways or 4 pillars: capacity building, continuous in-house training within the departments, having a project management mindset in the organizations which are time-oriented, complemented by regular international interaction. These form part of implementing that roadmap. And finally, most important of all, the political will to make it happen. You see, a foreign policy is indeed a country's game plan to drive its national interest abroad. How effective this game plan is, it will depend entirely on the strategies one comes up with and the project management process it puts in domestically to make the whole apparatus work. That's all, class. I'll open the floor to questions. Mr. Aguirre, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. So the floor is now open for questions, comments. If you want Mr. Ako to just elaborate further on some of the points that he has presented initially and you missed out, and you want him to go over it again, then please feel free to ask questions and make comments. Or those of you in the meeting room, also those of you watching via Facebook, the live stream, if you have questions, comments, you can share on the you can share, and then I'll read or make sure I communicate that with Mr. Ako.
It is becoming very, very a tightly contested space now, I think. You know, 10 years ago, we only had a handful of Papua New Guineans who understood the development cooperation mechanics. And that was simply because there was no social media. So we didn't have this type of platforms to discuss stuff. So the mechanics of development cooperation only was only restricted to maybe the Department of National Planning and the aid agencies. They would all know that. But now, with the advent of social media and technology, it's you can just easily go into any website and come out with the national development plans of development partners and how they go through. And not only that, I think Papua New Guineans are becoming more smarter, and they read a lot now, and they are questioning the status quo. We all know question the status quo, and one of the important things to remember is that development cooperation is the donor implementing its foreign policy through that vehicle in the receiving country. That we must understand. There's nothing about family. It is about a country's international relations. Yes, within those configuration, you will have good friendships will be made. But the underlying factor is one country is giving millions of kina or dollars to another country. And once it does that on its own side, it is also restricting some of its basic services to its own people in order to cover those bilateral relations, bilateral commitments. So that we must understand him. So when I was in China, one of the advice I gave to students who scholarship students who went there is on the simple advice I gave was, please come school, good, study hard, and go back, pass, and go back. You know, this is a money blow. Money was not a country. They could have used it to come up, put it more into innovation, research, to come up with some other good things, but they put it into bilateral relations, and you are the result of it. So study good, go back now, bring that level of understanding back home. Yes, and when we start looking at it from a foreign policy point of view, we know very well that it's someone's interest in another interest. So you look at that's why I mentioned economic statecraft. You know, when you research into economic statecraft, some of the economists are using carrots and sticks. So carrots would be economic statecraft is simply economic development, how economic development is used by the donor in the recipient country. So carrots would be something like scholarships, all those good things, carrots. Sticks would be enforcing embargoes and those type of things. You see, now our minds are opening up now. Our minds are opening up now, and we had very good speeches made today during the launching of the development plan, partnership plan 2024-2029. And it's both ministers spoke about they were optimistic about our relations going forward and the opportunities what this can bring. So all of this, the last lecture, the topic of the last lecture alone can create another 10 lectures going forward. Because then we can say, so what? How do we dig into the trends? You know, we could continue, and by the time we come up on the 10th side, we come up with some. Maybe we start talking about economic statecraft. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, and I'm so glad. And we will realize the fact that when I was studying public administration history and international relations was my minor. We did not have opportunities such as this. We did not have well, for me during my the final 3 years, I didn't have any practitioners coming to talk about the experiences. You know, so when we were fortunate enough to join the Foreign Service, our outlook on the practitioners were, oh wow, and more lines ako go stop overseas, yeah, no. And that provided, I think, a wrong impression No, if only we had practitioners coming and talking, they would have put those joining the foreign service, their thoughts and minds at ease, knowing very well that they money comes story finish. So this is what we're going to expect in there. So that was one of the challenges we had. But those trends are only a few of them. I decided to mention those. There's also mega trends, and mega trends cover a whole heap of other opportunities, a whole heap of other sticks and carrots, I think, that covers that. So, yeah, please. So, ask question. Tomorrow is going to be very important because maybe in preparation for tomorrow, read into the Australian sports diplomacy policy. That sports diplomacy policy covers the whole Pacific region. Covers the whole Pacific region. It covers the whole Pacific region, and it covers all sports too, all the sports and all that. So I'm looking forward to discussing that with the team in the class tomorrow. So it brings it to different perspective. How we think our NRL bid and the news that we will be the 19th team. How will that pan out? But please, I'll stop then. I'll wait any questions.
Mr. Ako, I have a question in regards to digital diplomacy. You talked about digital technology and the way that we are evolving at the moment. And if you look at Australia and China, for example, the Chinese embassy here in PNG, they have a Twitter account and they have a Facebook account. Likewise, the Australian High Commissioner has a Twitter account as well as a Facebook account, and everything that happens in the country, all their programs, all the things that they carry out in relation to their foreign policy, they on a daily basis they share information using their socials, their social media accounts. So, do you think PNG should pursue something similar to, or do something similar like what China and Australia is doing in the digital space in regards to the changes that are happening, DIC and data core and all that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think they should. We've seen on some other platforms that Foreign Minister Kachenko has a Facebook account where he informs public on the developments that's happening in his department, and that is the way to go. And when you look on LinkedIn, Secretary Stephen Matainaho is very advanced in terms of also providing what his department's been doing and all those things. It is nothing about sensitivities, because those are public knowledge which are printed in the newspapers. What they're doing is they're going the next step by putting it out because of the level of audience. You put him out on Facebook, you can have the right responses, but if you put it up out on LinkedIn, now that's where all the professionals are, and you'll get a very good feedback that can be used to correct any shortfalls you may find along the way. So it is good, and it is also important. Digital diplomacy has gone into, and like we said earlier on in the year, foreign policy is made up of trade and the security policies of each country. And when you look at digital, you see how the wars in the Middle East are now fought digitally. You look at how drones are now being utilized to defend or attack other economies, other countries, and those can be used as proof when the diplomats sit around the table to negotiate for peace. Or you look at the quick importance of or you look at today or yesterday's vote on the UN vote. It was out. We could see all the out. It was done digitally. You could see the countries voting. Those are all because it gives us real-time information. Maybe 20 years ago, we would still be waiting for the ambassador in New York to fax an outcome to the newspapers, and we would be reading about this maybe next week. But it's happening there, and smart students also going directly into the UN website. So the websites of developed economies are also very educational and very advanced. The Chinese website, or the Japanese, the Australian DFAT websites, the New Zealand, the MFAT website, those are very educated. You can get bilateral stories from there. You met them, we are still developing, so we just follow through. But I agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Hako. Any questions, comments, Patrick? Mr. Kaiku, any commentary from you or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ako and Mr. Benediora for this invitation to be part of it. This is the last, I believe, the last lecture, Mr. Ako. Yeah, I was just sorry I came in late, but I mean, I appreciate this is a very technocratic explanation of the APEC process and Papua New Guinea's participation in it, and the challenge of domesticating this the agendas of APEC 2018. I just had one question and then a comment. The question firstly relates to the challenges. In your opinion, Mr. Lawiyako, what are the domestic challenges in terms of domesticating the APEC agendas? These are very highly, we're playing with all these advanced economies around us. You're part of the game. Maybe you have delivered a previous lecture on this particular subject matter, but just for because I'm just joining, what are some of the domestic challenges in terms of our interagency, the different agencies that are supposed to be domesticating and mainstreaming, like incorporating it into their work plans? And how knowledgeable are our public officials in all these different agencies, Department of Trade and Industry, or they call it now International Trade, Department of Foreign Affairs, Commerce, Finance, Treasury. How well versed would you, make of the officers in these different agencies and ministries of government? Because we are trying to make it become part of the routine work of Papua New Guinea bureaucracy, our commitments and agendas with the APEC. That's, I think, the first, then the obvious question. Secondly, the point about digital diplomacy. Digital diplomacy is one of the, believe it or not, it's one of the topics that, this line Foreign Affairs, when they go down for training down at the Victoria University in Wellington, this, diplomatic training, yeah? The certificate program. It's listed there as part of the one of the sections there in the training of our diplomats. Do you think that digital diplomacy is actually very supposed to be offered because of our own, in fact, problems with having any like functioning website for the Department of Foreign Affairs? Talk public diplomacy this last 2 weeks. And I think one of the challenges that I identified is that our image management and reputational management, Papua New Guinea has a very bad reputation globally because of, bad reporting of news that goes out into the public and into the wider global community. You would expect that the Department of Foreign Affairs would have a functioning website that we can seek to clarify some of the misinformation that's out there about PNG, the Pogera tribal war that's happening now. We cannot allow, the tarnishing of Papua New Guinea as a whole from deterring investors and potential visitors to our country. So you would expect that a frontline agency dealing with our international relations and reputation management activities like the Department of Foreign Affairs would have a functioning website to clarify, official positions of government, and that would perhaps restrict further misinformation out there. So question and statement, comment, and that's just for the floor. We can talk about it. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Kaiku, thank you very much for that. You've hit the nail on the head when you mentioned the commentaries you made on the domestic challenges and the digital diplomacy. Maybe I'll try. I'll start with the last one and go backwards. I agree with you on digital diplomacy. The programs done in New Zealand. I'm not sure whether they're still doing it or maybe they still they have websites going down there. I agree, and you are correct in saying the curriculum is not related to our situation or domestic practices, and it defeats the whole purpose. And I did mention that during another engagement with AP4D. AP4D is a joint is a platform where they discuss security and diplomacy. And I did mention that too, that whatever training our development partners provide must prepare the officers to return home to Papua New Guinea to implement those actions, those capabilities. And the digital diplomacy one is a clear example. And you are right in saying that because there's no website, we are all just I for one am just getting information from social media and from the papers, and just like the situation of the tourists in Kokoda. And I mentioned earlier on before Mr. Kaiku came on to make an intervention. It's the same domestically. When we look at other websites, other international websites, we will see them talking and give information about us. And we have the challenges. We did have from my experience in China, we did have a website in China, and we tried to get it up and running, and we funded it from our operational cost, but after budgeting, no got funding come to headquarters na auto hino important Lucy people just walk the son na my name walk. But I guess we were operating before our time, so that didn't eventuate. And like I said, I do agree with your ideas on digital diplomacy. Maybe that is still a few decades ahead of us yet, but unfortunately we cannot let it go because we are now in the digital world. And how fast can we move to adapt to this? How fast can the public, can the bureaucracy understand what Stephen Matai now is talking about in terms of the digital development and innovation in his department? And that brings me to the first question, the domestic challenges of domesticating the APEC 2018 outcome. Political will is there, cabinet game instruction finish in one of those decisions. Kisim outcome na go domesticate him now. It was so simple. So the owners went back to all the, in 2019, we called it workshop in April, and we called in all the copy agencies and we told them, okay, APEC 2018 finished now. Pack the outcomes on one side, and now all of you, brief us now on how far ahead you are in terms of your in terms of implementing the outcomes of MTDP3. Plenty respond, and that brought us to the assumption that it is very it is a challenge to understand all these policies. Because at the divisional head level, FAS level, and even at DepSec level, the understanding is very, very limited in terms of getting an MTDP, because the APEC foreign policy, the PNG foreign policy on APEC was supposed to bring the MTDP 3 in, which means that you'll have your domestic agenda inserted in there, because it was done by sectors, and the MTDP 3 was written out department by department, but it gave the departments everything on the golden platter. This is how you should move. Now, the APEC, the foreign policy on APEC went one step further and said, okay, this is how you should move. And now Kisim this movement blue and insert it into the APEC, your APEC working group agenda. If it's the agriculture working group, you get those 5 outcomes you have. Na karim go, na try lo him one time, all activities below APEC agriculture working group. Now out of those 5, if one connects with that is the idea you should push as the country's, you should advance for the country in the APEC space. Or not lose him because they do not connect back to our domestic. It's been hard to comprehend most of the departments to comprehend that. And then secondly, was the capacity to understand the MTDP, the medium-term development plans, and how they related to the APEC outcome. It was so, in terms of understanding it, the APEC 2018 outcomes listed down all our Vision 2050 pathways, how we would move to achieve that. Now what it required was to get the domestic agency tie your work to tie your operational activities into that agenda, and then every time you go and attend an APEC working group meeting, your APEC working group meeting, you go and push that domestic agenda on the right now on the MTDP 4. If you are from Department X, and then in the MTDP 4, your Department X is supposed to be doing this. Now you kiss him this lah. Write up a policy, write up a concept note on how to drive it and bring it to your APEC working group. And then over there, present him na push him as a national agenda, as a national interest. And then you push it, then it becomes, you push it going, and if it gets traction from the other economies, and it goes to and becomes part of APEC's activity, then we have driven our national agenda in the APEC space. It's a clear-cut multilateral diplomacy. But this I'm hard to understand him, and I don't blame the departments. I don't blame the bureaucracy for that. There is very limited mentoring that is happening. There is very limited coaching that is happening. There is very limited learning activities that happen within the departments. You know, when you look at sending officers for training programs abroad, like attending APEC capacity building workshop or a 3 months course or what, most departments, they don't, it is not done by sending the right person. No, God. Prangu no go course it overseas or salimem go. Regardless of whether Emba go na come back na adding value, it's not the point. The fact is that this person has not gone yet on an overseas trip, send him. So that derails any work plan you might have, derails any training program the HR division the departments may have. So those are for the Department of Foreign Affairs. It's different. You are managing 2 groups of people: the policy people, the policy, and the consular. And you have to manage the expectations of the consular people properly. Sample consular line, for instance, those who are sitting in the accounts, they assume that they're going to go on posting. They should be in line for posting also, and I don't blame them. And once they apply and they don't happen, then they start paying lip service to their job without realizing that you come to join the department, you come looking accounts here. You are not, you know, that's your specialty. So a time will come when you could be posted to one of the consulates or consul generals abroad. But to aspire from an account to aspire to go to one of the policy missions, like in the UN or to Brussels or to the Commonwealth or all that, that's it's not connected properly. So, Mr. Kaiko, capacity remains a big problem. Uh, I ask some of my colleagues from the other economies how our teams moving there, and they said that we don't have any issues with the PNG APEC staff. But the new ones who are coming from the other departments are going back to pre-2013 PNG membership days. Where may Sinda na pasi mo sa na look, and it's happening now over there. And once it happens, it can continue. We are very hopeful that the foreign policy white paper will provide direction. Now, when the foreign policy white paper comes out, the onus is now on the lead department, calling one big seminar. I mean, that's how I would assume would be done. Call a big seminar of all the departments and tell them this is how it's going to happen. Now, you look at those 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 pillars we have on the foreign policy white paper, Mino looking at. Now, you see where your department comes under. And then mark him. Now, I don't know whose responsibility it will be to start working on the roadmap, to operationalize it. How by me? I'm now whose responsibility will be to work on a roadmap or ops plan to operationalize that foreign policy strategy. Because we all know very well that capacity is lacking in our bureaucracy. So if that's the case, then you'll have to bring in people from outside to do that for the department or for the bureaucracy. Mr. Kaiko, during one of our engagement, you did mention about New Zealand and all these other smaller economies driving their foreign policy agenda. The New Zealand system is an interesting one. They have everyone from across the public service nominated to support the diplomacy. And I experienced that in the APEC process when I asked some of the teams what divisions they win. They said, no, we are not foreign affairs. We are from the other departments. We are here because of our expertise. And this New Zealand realizes its size. That's why it uses its experts to drive its agenda abroad. So less effort, big outcomes. For us, we're still learning on how to reach that level. Mr. Plap.
Thank you, Mr. Akuen. Thank you, Mr. Kaiku. Yes, for us, we are forever learning. So now let's move from digital diplomacy and APEC to educational diplomacy. Mr. Ako, you talked about education. And if you look at yesterday's newspaper, Peter O'Neill went to Brisbane and he did a presentation for the Australian Institute for Progress. And he mentioned something on educational diplomacy, which I disagree. So I would like to listen to Mr. Ako's opinion on that. He made a statement. Firstly, he made a statement that currently there's 7,500 PNG and Pacific students in Australian universities. And then he compared that with 153,000 Chinese students. And he said Australia should accommodate or take in more PNG and Pacific students in order to make sure there's a change and there's stability. It will contribute to a more stable geopolitical environment in the Pacific. That's what he said. So my point of disagreement is that based on my PhD research, what I've read so far. So what I'm trying to do for my research is to find out how China can help PNG to internationalize, bring up the standard of our, through educational exchanges, help us to also internationalize by lifting the standards of our 8 or 9, 10 universities, so we can accommodate international students, bring in more students from maybe China or Indonesia, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, Australia, for that matter, under the New Colombo plan as well. So what O'Neill is saying is for us to go back and depend on Australia again. And I disagree with that. I think Australia should put the development aid money into funding or supporting institutions like UPNG, what they're doing for the current economics program, the partnership ANU has with UPNG, Divine Word University, WPU, Unitec, and the other universities as well. So we should put more money, more Australian taxpayers' money into building up these institutions, building up capacity for staff, upgrade from masters to PhD level. So we have a lot of PhD people. Put more money into research in the various fields, from international relations to election-related matters, anthropological researches, culture, to STEM research. So that should be the focus, instead of us talking about increasing our numbers in Australian universities. It should be us getting more money and trying to attract Australian students to come and study at UPNG or Unitec or Divine Word University. So that's my take on that based on my research so far. I think we should focus on building the capacity, and it's in line with the Namaliu Gano report, where they talked about building capacity in order to make sure we get more international students, because there's a lot of money coming in if you look at student mobility, international student mobility. So yeah, that's that on educational diplomacy. So what are your thoughts on educational diplomacy as a trend, future trend in PNG's foreign policy?
I do agree
You
with
get on the floor.
your thoughts on that. It goes back to the digital diplomacy discussion we had with Mr. Kaiku earlier on, and it goes back to my thoughts on the defense cooperation arrangements that we are bringing. We are sending our students abroad, and look, since we don't have the STEM capability, yes, for the moment we're sending them abroad, but then time will come back. The infrastructure is not. There's an imbalance, and your suggestion is important, and that was my suggestion when I had a talk with AP4. I said you need to build infrastructure here. So this is the same infrastructure stuff, same training money working member come back here, and come in and fit in nicely into what he or she learned there, can come and build from here. And I do agree with that. We need to start building up our own capacity. We start building up our own capacity to ensure that we can train our own people here. And once we train our own people here, we know ourselves. We can move in whatever direction we want. It's still the dependency syndrome. I see, on one side of the scale, they say, listen, you go and learn how it's done, come back and try to do it. You look at the examples of the military, and I say that with all respect to the PNGDF as an institution. Right up to the 1980s, so right up to the early 1980s, the army barracks were no-go zones, regardless of the time of the day. You had to come to the gate and then make an appointment, or if you were inviting friends or family to come and visit, you had to put their names at the gate. Sold by Khan, Tok Saven, and then the gate people will call your house. Are you expecting these people? Yes. You had the environment was a very, very, very military environment. No strolling around, no loafing around by dependents. You just stay where you are at your married quarters, go to school and back. So based on those environment, this environment was the same as the army barracks in Australia. So back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the line go school come in. They came and that fitted in very well because same environment to look at. Now it's totally different. We have rundown facilities. We have issues of rundown facilities. Infrastructure is not same as what one will go and train down there. So there's an imbalance, and the same goes for our educational system, which was the reason why in 2016 I made a submission, and Sam Manasupe, then Chief Secretary, agreed for Igam Barracks to be converted, the Igam Barracks, the Defense Academy, to be converted into a major institution, and the arrangement was for the APEC finance process, the finance minister's process, APEC finance minister's process to be held, and that means you have the deputy governors, the senior finance officers, and then the ministers. So the submission was made for 25 villas to be built at Igam Barracks. The 25 villas to be built at Igam Barracks, a 500-seat auditorium, the officer cadets mess and the sergeant's mess and the officer's mess to be converted into 5-star hotels. So the APEC, the 2 weeks meeting, which will bring in all the APEC finance heads, after all meet finish now go, then all those things will be assumed by the Army. That didn't go on well. I went and met with the defense hierarchy, and guess what? When I was walking out of the meeting, they saw me, because most of the colonels I met with were officer cadets when I was a grade 7 student at Igam Barracks. So they saw me as Chaplain Arco's son. They did not see me as the Director General of the APEC Secretariat. So at the car park, one of the colonels came and told me, "Son, listen, something below me, Lucy me played by handling." And I said, I told him, you're making a very, very bad mistake. This is there's already talk about the Joint Services College. Imagine after the meeting ends, you'll have a world-class institutions where you can, like what Mr. Egiro implied, you can then, because of the 25 villas you have, you can bring in professor generals from around the world to teach the officer cadets. Those were the thoughts, but it got shot down quickly by the powers that may be. So the FMP was held in Port Moresby, and then in 2017, the same person in 2017, the same person came to the APEC Secretariat and was looking for me, and he came and said, "Listen, this is all fast up yet," and you know how Mr. Guro, how me, I gave him some nice choicy words. Those type of things. So now we are looking for funding to renovate, recuperate the Defense Academy, which is the Joint Services College, to make it a more world-class standard. The opportunities were there in the beginning, and the same goes for let me divert it to the Rarongo Theological College in Kokopo, the United Church school, where pastors go to learn to become reverends and get a degree. We still there is still requirements to fit in before it becomes a university. And guess what the requirements are? The same requirements. Lack of capacity and planning is spoiling laws, and it goes back to our education. I really don't know what the general thought is, but whether we go abroad and get education then come back, or being homegrown is better. All of us are homegrown. I did my first degree at home. I had the opportunity of doing a master's abroad while I was abroad, but I thought they didn't touch on me. So when I came back, there was a master's program going on, so I enrolled in there. But that doesn't stop people from going about doing their lives wishes. But medical educational diplomacy is a very critical subject, and our people, our bilateral partners have got us by the balls, so to use the word. They've got us by the balls, and they're squishing, and we got no way to balance that. Because when you take out all the challenges you have right in thinking about, and look at it with a vision of the education. Look at it with a purely educational vision by looking. The scholarships are now is a challenge. There's now comparison between the Chinese scholarship and the Australian New Zealand scholarship, that the Chinese ones are better because they pay you when you live in free accommodation. Well, if you go down under or to New Zealand, you pay for your own accommodation with the scholarship you get. But then there's talk about the quality of education. But the point is how the quality of the education might be 1,000-fold. But time you come back to the harsh realities of our beautiful country, how are you going to implement that? How are you going to sit here and talk about what we're talking about? Going abroad for refreshers a couple of months now and then to challenge your brains with your other international colleagues, good plan. But to have a totally different mindset on this thing is a thing. And like I said, that's the edge the developed economies have over us. And then when we talk about sports diplomacy, it's the same thing again. Sports diplomacy is the same thing again. They've got it all planned down right down to the last dot.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. Before I go to Mr. Kaiko for his comments, I'll just quickly read out. There's a comment here from William Wariambu on Facebook. So William said, probably image management and digital diplomacy is either not so high on DFA's Department of Foreign Affairs priority, though they have a public diplomacy and cultural affairs branch, or there are manpower issues to staff this critical branch. In terms of training, I would like to think it is critical to diplomatic training in this era, whether we engage in public diplomacy or not, to still be trained in digital diplomacy so that we have foreign service officers who understand how to utilize digital technology in diplomatic practice. So these are thoughts shared by William on Facebook. Thank you. Mr. Kaiku, please go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Yegiora and Mr. Wariambu and Mr. Lauyako. This is not necessarily a question, but I mean, it may be a comment. The educational exchange programs and scholarships, they serve interests of the so-called sponsors of these scholarship arrangements. I agree that there is perhaps not necessarily I mean, they may fulfill their own expectations. The Australian Awards program, the Fulbright with the United States and matched with Japan, Erasmus for the European Union. They may try to fulfill their own interest, but I don't know of any situation in PNG where we actually connect it, align it to our own developmental needs in PNG. We may be sending a lot of students overseas, and it's a head count of how many people get PhDs or masters or go on scholarships that are prestigious, the prestigious Fulbright scholarship in the United States. But I think it's on our part that when we are sending all these students or Papua New Guinean students overseas to do whatever kinds of programs, what is the expectation of them coming into filling what specific niches in terms of our development needs? So that could be a likely situation that is confronting us, especially when you are sending a lot of students overseas on this so-called STEM program. What are the expectations of coming back to fulfill what specific areas of? Are they going to be in teaching in universities, in teachers colleges? What use are we going to be utilizing them? Will they be coming back here to be self-starters in their own enterprises, for example? And I say this because you look at the experience of Japan when it opened up and it started sending its after the so-called was it Tokugawa period, the Meiji Restoration period. It had a specific agenda about going out to get knowledge to come back and industrialize Japan and prepare to modernize and to compete with the Western imperial powers. So I don't know what kind of specific agenda we have if we're talking about scholarships. Maybe it fulfills the expectations of these donor countries who are putting in money to educate Papua New Guineans and develop our human capital. But perhaps in terms of it being aligned to our own domestic needs and development aspirations, that could be one of those missing gaps. And the floor is open for any kind of discussion about that.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiku. Mr. Ako, you have anything to add?
No, it's Mr. Kaik was right with that, and it all goes back to the planning again and the MTDP 4. Let's use the MTDP 4 now because it's the current one. It's all written then, and people they are critics of it saying it's too ambitious. Some critics are saying that nothing much is written in it. So okay, so too ambitious or nothing much. So what do you want? Or are you criticizing it because you are finding it hard to implement? It's from a strategic planner's point of view. A plan is a plan. A plan like General Eisenhower said, a plan is good, but a plan is not it's like a balancing type of thing. You can plan, but once you start operationalizing it, everything you plan along the way, you have to be adaptive to it to change. So the MTDP 4 is a plan, and the onus is on all the departments to take it and connect it with your annual strategy. Not work plan, your annual strategy. What is one strategy the department blue? From the strategy, then you start operationalizing it, and that's where the work plan comes under. The work plan doesn't come from looking at the MTDP 4 and working. No. You as a department, you have your own corporate plan. From there, you operationalize it. I think that's where the confusion lies, and one of the biggest difference I've seen now that I've been 4 years out from the public service, is the difference between the private sector and the public service. Private sector is very result oriented, and every quarter or what you're reviewing the strategic plan, you're reviewing your roadmap. How good is it working? Or suppose work good, how we fix him? Or go train him, or need him training logistics, or go train, come back, work him. The public service, you book him boosters all because how about you go training? There's only X number of training, and it does not cover everyone. In a private sector, the whole team must go train. Low achieving outcome. So maybe which is the reason why I decided to put in decided to suggest a project management approach might be better, because a project management approach combines private and public sector work practices. And if you give a project management way of thinking to the public servant, maybe it will be easier for him to understand, because a project has a start date and a finish date. So MEC will understand. Then in between them, you start working on the plans to achieve it. So we have a lot of challenge, but the good thing, we have a lot of challenge going forward, but the good thing is we know what they are. 20 years ago, we had challenges. We were trying to find out which challenges, but now we social media and digitalization in our systems have made us so we can actually Google. For goodness sake, I passed my global certification on project management by Googling 30 of the other questions in the open book exam and passing it. So digital is so important. We just have to know how to use it.
interesting point made by Mr. Kaiku. And if you look at yesterday's paper and what Mr. O'Neill said, he said we should increase placements for teachers as well as healthcare professionals. We should train more of them so they can ramp up the health and education outcomes. So that's one interesting point that Mr. O'Neill made that is in connection to what Mr. Kaiku said. If that's the focus area, then we should negotiate and get train more teachers and more uh, healthcare professionals and teachers, not only high school teachers, but if you look at universities all over the country, we don't have a lot of PhD holders. So that's something that is a really big gap that we need to fill. So we need to get more academics who are at master's level to move up to PhD level and then postdoctoral and all that. So we put more money into research and uh, conduct more research in order to help us formulate better policies or evidence or research-based policies. So we have a lot of things that we need to iron out, look at, fix properly in order to better negotiate with our development partners, Australia, New Zealand, the European Union, Japan, China, and other countries that are offering scholarship or educational exchanges for Papua New Guineans. But like I said, the important thing as well, we have to also tingim yumieta. Ting Nobel blumiet or tingim country blumiet. When we negotiate, we try to bring some things back in terms of infrastructure, building up our universities. I think in the country we have the highest number of universities. How many universities does Fiji have? Or Solomon Islands, Tonga, Samoa for that matter? PNG, we have close to, I think, 10 to 11 universities now. And Maritime will soon be another university, Maritime College. So we'll have a university specializing in maritime training. So PNG is growing and we need a lot of people in that space, in the higher education space, to really drive our agenda forward, whether it's STEM or maritime security, social science research, all this. We need support from our external partners. So it's a really interesting trend in our foreign policy, and it goes back to our diplomats and the government and our leaders at the helm of government. So our job as academics is to talk about these issues and bring it under the spotlight, so we magnify these issues and they can pick on that and then factor that into their negotiations when they go out to talk bilaterally or multilaterally. Mr. Ako has a comment. Yes, Mr. Ako, you can say.
I was just adding on to what you were saying. Not only do we need more PhD holders, we also need more specialized universities. So that like what Mr. O'Neill is saying, so that when we send students down and they come back, they want to follow through in the academic area, then they have the specialized universities there to go and impart their knowledge. So that's another thing. I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why the developed economies go advancing in leaps and bounds. So you look at the number of universities China has. China, I think, has universities in all the subjects. Well, Mr. Gero, what university did you and Dr. Huala Momi go to?
Jilin University.
And no, but what type of university was it?
They offered engineering and arts, social science programs, political science, study of Marxism and international relations.
And you look at their defense colleges are taught by retired generals who are also professors. And that goes back to the number of PhD holders. They've got tons of retired PhD holders who are doing nothing, so they're utilizing them in schools. So I know those are challenges we are yet to overcome, but like I said, we know what they are now. The only thing we can do now is, as soon as the FP white paper comes out, we grab it next year and start working to drive it forward in our own spaces.
Any more questions, comments for Mr. Ako? We have roughly 12 minutes remaining. We'll wind up at 9 o'clock. So 12 minutes remaining. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. I mean, just to add on to what Mr. Ako shared with us now, they also have sports universities and agriculture universities, and they specialize in teaching badminton or table tennis or one particular sport, even football, soccer for that matter. So you see the Olympics now, they are increasing the number of medals that they're winning. It's all because of the specialized colleges or universities. They specialize in volleyball or basketball, gymnastics, and all these. The universities just teach all these sports right across. So they look at the theory of sports and the different sporting codes, and then they have the practical. They go out and play those sports as well. So it's really interesting how they're doing it, or the setup in their own country. So maybe whether we follow their model or not, that's up to our leaders and you, future leaders who are listening to our conversation silently. So it's up to people to think strategically and then look at all the experiences around us. And I won't talk about rugby league because that's our topic for tomorrow. So we leave it for tomorrow. But I saw somewhere today they said we have to Mal Maninga said we have to teach rugby league in our schools or learn rugby league academically. So I don't know, that's something that we should consider. If you look at all the other schools in Australia, those sports academic high schools, they also have sports as part of the curriculum. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and Mr. Ego, in addition to that, the Motokoita Assembly will shortly commence the under 6, under 8, under 10 basic rugby league age group. Not a competition. Of course, they'll have the 10 minutes or what game, but I was talking with the chairman tonight. The whole aim of that exercise is to teach people how to pass, kick, and all that. So although it's a step in the right direction, we all are finding our way there, but I'll repeat again, we know where to go now because of social media and all our interactions like that.
Okay, so these are some trends in PNG's foreign policy that we've highlighted and like discussed for you people to take note. And while we focus on only a few like digital diplomacy and educational diplomacy, APEC, or economic diplomacy, there are other areas where the world is changing rapidly and other areas are becoming more important and they're becoming part of how countries deal with each other and the programs that they put forward and to help each other develop. So I encourage all of you to continue to read. Mr. Kaiku, you want to add anything?
I mean, we're talking about how the world is becoming a very small place and integrated, and how populations are very mobile. And we look at the experience of some of these countries, for example, in the Middle East and even the Indian subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Malaysia, to some extent, Indonesia. These countries are able to export their human, capital. It's the kind of training that is also make Papua New Guineans comparative to, we talk about foreign direct investment, but it's also the remittance from expatriates who bring into the country that also boosts the foreign reserves of any country. Large populations of Tongans and Samoans, they work overseas and they remit money back to their communities. That is perhaps some of the largest financial resources that are available for their country's economic growth and prospects. So we are talking about how emerging trends are happening, and Papua New Guinea has a very big population compared to other smaller Pacific Island countries. Exporting human beings and the kind of education that is competitive, or the skill set that are needed to compete or to be part of the global workforce, right? That is, I think, one of those things we can see as a trend, because Papua New Guinea has a very big young population, and we are unable to provide opportunities here. So perhaps an outlet of this, exporting the know-how of our talented citizens who go and get world credentialed qualifications outside is also part of that kind of maybe looking 20 years or 50 years from now. So we are looking ahead in terms of how we are part of the global community. Just another point also, just looking at the website of the Solomon Islands National University, SINU, it's really fascinating. I've always been following up with what's happening in the Solomon Islands. And, Solomon Islands is relatively, compared to Papua New Guinea, as a smaller population, but they have, academics who are teaching in universities around the Asia Pacific. And they, in terms of their proportion and ratio, they have some of the, they export their human capital. SINU is also tailored towards the actual specific needs of the Solomon Islands. They have agriculture, fisheries and forestry, business and tourism studies, nursing, medicine and health, science and technology. So the kind of, this university is packaged as just reflective of the developmental needs of the country, the Solomon Islands. It's not trying to aspire to build skyscrapers, all of that. Training the human needs, human capital that's needed for the targeted area of their national developments, the different sectors that are relevant for their development. I think that is the conversation we in Papua New Guinea should also be talking about, the training that is needed for the bulk of the population that needs this kind of know-how for the pursuing some of the developmental agendas of this country. We would not want to be transformed overnight to become like Dubai or United States. So working with what we have and the trainings that are needed, like tourism or forestry or agriculture or fisheries, or even maritime training, it's important perhaps to deal with our own immediate development needs. Those are a few remarks I wanted to make.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiku and Mr. Ako, for your time tonight, and to all our attendees on Zoom, as well as those watching via Facebook and those who will be watching on YouTube. Thank you very much for your time, for listening to what we have to share with you all. And I hope you took notes and will contribute to the discussion as we continue to grow or change as a country. So that brings us to the end of our lecture for tonight. We thank Mr. Ako once again for his time, and we hope to listen to him again tomorrow for our final round of Q&A discussions, and it will be on rugby league or sports diplomacy tomorrow from 1:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon. So Sol, thank you to Olgata. Good night to Olgata. We'll see each other again tomorrow.
Good night, Ogata.
All right, Mr. Ako, Mr. Kaiku. Thank you.